Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karin Anderson-Abril here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliott Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth
to help us thrive in love and life.
All right, Karin, we're excited for part 2 today of navigating our romantic partnerships or our marriage when the little ones come, starting with pregnancy. And we focused quite a bit on conception and into the delivery last episode. And now we're doing the same. And we tried to get some female perspective right away. And I couldn't talk Angie into being on the program. She is still teaching, to be fair to her.
Surprise.
It's not like she just going to take a day off of school here, but
yeah,
that's not her thing. She's a behind the scenes kind of woman, not a front. She wasn't raised on the stage like we were. So
yeah.
Sometimes I wonder why people don't like to do that. I'm like, why don't you just want to be up there? Anyway, she had a great perspective.
Just public speaking is the number one fear across the board. So she's actually more normative, more normal than we are.
If we said, though, the show was going out to elementary school children across the world, she'd jump right on.
Well, because then she'd feel real confident in her area of expertise and giftedness.
So her perspective I got last night from dinner after she told me she wouldn't be on. It was
shut you down.
She said that one of the first things that came to her mind in light of the episode, I told her some of the things we'd covered, was that there's an identity shift for everybody. And so there's an identity shift for the woman, even if she's dreamed of being a mother her whole life. And in Angie's case, so good with kids, obviously an award-winning teacher. So everyone would just think naturally, oh my goodness, this mothering thing's gonna be a piece of cake for you. But she said it's still a big switch. And then in her case, when you're driven and perfectionistic and like to do everything right, which is wonderful, babies don't respond easily to everything. And she said there's some doubt that creeps in, even for a woman who is gifted with kids. And so within that perspective of just identity, she said, so then you have the identity of the mother changing from wife and teacher to now mother added to that moniker. And in her case, waiting for 10 years for that to happen, added some weight to it. And then in my case, I'm changing from husband and, at that point, therapist as primary and business partner to father, adding that into it. And so that identity shift ties into the family of origin stuff we talked about last episode, ties into new systemic needed for conversation and talking. And again, our scenario is a little extreme, so it's not the same for everybody.
But it's good to bring an extreme example, because I think because you had 4 in 2 years, people who have 1 for 2 years, should be a piece of cake compared to what you're sharing. So, I mean, you really having had that extreme scenario, which was a blessing in abundance, just a nod to your book. Yeah. I think your perspective is very valuable, because you're like, hey, if I can make it, you guys can make it too.
Yeah. And so she said there was a time to kind of embrace her new identity. And we touched on this last episode a little bit, but we can zero in a little bit more. Her primary identity was teacher, and now primary identity was going to be mother.
Well,
and so there's a big switch there.
Let's not forget mentally. Wife, though.
I'm just saying on her professional side, just the professional aspect.
As in her day-to-day job description, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure we keep that hierarchy in place.
And again, she's a super only, right? She's a firstborn super only, with her brother being born when she was 16. So that makes a difference. The personality and temperament and birth order of the mother and father make a big difference as well. And so then it was interesting when I drilled down more into her about that piece, even though it was so overwhelmingly joyful, and twins are harder than singles, your first time through. She said it was the second piece of that was the willingness to receive help and not feel like you have to be super mama and that you don't have to do everything. And even when you read 300 books and go to seminars on mothering, every baby, every scenario is going to be different. When Olivia had those preemie issues and couldn't hold a single meal down, right? It just gets so exhausting. And the willingness and the vulnerability to say, hey, I need some help. I need to talk to other people. I need to have my husband do some things differently to help. I need whatever those scenarios are, the vulnerability to allow the support base to increase.
Well, and so getting back to the identity, knowing Angie as I do, she is a take charge type of woman. I got this. I don't need help. That's part of her identity is that strong independence, that strong will, which I love and I respect and admire. So I think what we're hearing is that in these next couple months before baby arrives, what a good opportunity to kind of let me take stock of who I am and my sense of self and my sense of my skills and my capabilities and my expertise and my strengths and weaknesses, and recognize that a lot of this may start shuffling. Yes. And I'm going to have to look to a side of myself that maybe I haven't had to. Angie was not one who liked to be dependent on anyone. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure that changed a little bit in your years of marriage, because that's part of become one, and you do to start to depend on each other. I think it's a really good point. So for some people who maybe like a youngest child who's used to asking for people for help and people bossing them around. I mean, I don't know who we're talking about here, but someone like that might be more comfortable asking for assistance. Someone else with more Angie's temperament and personality might find that this is putting me outside of my comfort zone. I'm not used to having to ask for help. So that's I'm so glad she brought that up. That's
and a great equating. She said she equated her need of help as failure. That somehow she'd done something wrong or she wasn't equipped well enough, right? And that's a personal thing. I certainly wasn't putting that on her. Either was her mom or our mom or anybody else. It was just that personal inside. And again, most people thought what she did for the 4 years there of 4 babies under 2 and 3 and 4 was unbelievably impressive. But to her, if it didn't go smoothly, that's that perfectionistic drive. If it didn't go smoothly all the time, or there was things that got outside of the systemic rhythm, her first response was to blame herself. Wasn't necessarily to blame me, wasn't necessarily to blame the Lord or anybody else. It was just wrestling through. So I think the dynamic we're talking about, Karin, is know yourself well enough to know your vulnerabilities, recognize your birth order, recognize the marital dynamic. Angie and I are both very strong-willed, very opinionated, very passionate. And so sometimes there's competition between us even about who can do the most. And so at times I would be like almost encouraging her to do more when the kids were all so dramatically young. And I was accidentally putting more pressure on her. I didn't mean to. That was just the dynamic of the way we do things and how we kind of challenge each other. One of those additional love languages I added to Chapman's. And again, challenge doesn't have to be assertive and argumentative or debating. That's just the way we do it. But I recognize I had to shift too. And eventually, if you remember, Karin, especially when it was like from when the kids were 0, 0, 1, 2 and 1, 1, 2, 3, when the dependency needs are at their absolute highest. And with Angie's blessing, because it was more my style to reach out socially, I'm the more social one, to say, hey, can we just sit down, hum together, and let's write a list of ladies that we trust as godly women who love the Lord, love their families, love their husband, have been mothers, and maybe have even raised the whole crew, so they're a little bit older, have a little more time. And why don't we call these ladies and see who might be able to come help, and just even if we could set up a structure of every single day, another godly woman being in the home with Angie and these 4 rugrats. And she was very blessed by it, and she helped coordinate the list, and some names on there I wouldn't have thought about necessarily. And I had some that she goes, no, I don't think so. And she was just trusting her instinct, and it worked. It was incredibly beautiful. And for 4 out of the 5 days, weekdays, we had a different woman coming at a different time for a couple hours every single day for 2 years. And it was enormously helpful. I mean, incredibly helpful. And the kids just got a bunch of extended grandmas and aunts. And some of the mothers brought their daughters, and then they had all kinds of help. And so it's just, again, even with one child, I know the 4 is extreme, but even if you have one child and you feel overwhelmed and you just feel a little out of your element, or you're feeling doubtful, and you just need that encouragement to be willing to prayerfully consider some other ladies or men, more likely ladies when the kids are real little, to help, to be a resource, to be a support, to be encouraging. I think it's extremely important. And often with these young couples I work with, I just, without necessarily recommending that specific type of structure, try to tell them ahead of time, hey, let's talk about your resource base. Let's talk about your small group. Let's talk about your church, your neighborhood, your parents, who's going to be around to help if needed, when needed, and to put that in a regular functionality so it feels like, oh, this is just the way you do it.
A few years ago, I started having trouble falling asleep, and I started taking melatonin because I thought it was a natural way to try to relax myself, calm myself down, and go to sleep. But it turns out that as a hormone supplement, melatonin can disrupt our other hormones and we can build up an immunity to it. So when we started partnering with the wellness company, I was super excited to try their melatonin-free sleep aid called Restful Sleep. It includes passion flower, chamomile, valerian root, among other herbs and natural ways to help calm us down and get us ready to go to bed. I've been using it for a couple months now, and Restful Sleep helps my mind and body quiet themselves and ease into sleep. If you've ever had insomnia, you know how brutal it is. The wellness company's Restful Sleep can help. Head over to twc.health/lovelife and enter promo code LOVELIFE at checkout for 15% off your entire order. That's twc.health/lovelife and promo code LOVELIFE for 15% off your entire order. Well, and getting back to the couple dynamics, I think I'm also hearing the idea that as in the intrapersonal, in the individual level, a mother to be she might do well to really take stock of who she is and recognize that some of that is going to be altered. And her husband needs to recognize, and for him too, I'm sure, but since we're focusing on the mom right now, her husband needs to be ready for some aspects of her personality that seem very new and different, and to be able to adjust to that and to work with that. Because when you're a couple and you're in your groove and in your rhythm, and you think the love of your life that you're here married to, and all of a sudden you see this new facet of their personality, and maybe they're uncomfortable with that new facet of their personality, like you said, because it's not really wanted to have to ask for help for some women in this case. We're giving an example of Angie, but so someone who's like, I'm not even comfortable with this, and then the husband's got to deal with her new facet of her personality and then perhaps her discomfort therein.
Yeah. And Warren and Leah, our older brother and his wife, their two kids came relatively simply. And I don't mean that they're still a gift from God, but it wasn't through infertility or things that.
I know, but Leah had a miscarriage before Amy. And I
didn't even remember that.
So and if she hadn't, we wouldn't have Amy, because the timing was such that we would have another niece or nephew.
Your memory is always so astounding. That's great. I'm sure Angie will remember it too. I had no idea. Didn't remember it all. So anyway, I was just thinking about at the time when they had their children, they were at Judson as dorm parents, and Angie and I were at Judson as dorm parents, which was really fun. But I cherished those times that I got to be more engaged. And so I would take Amy, and we went into Wilson Hall, the men's dorm in the summers, obviously not during the school year.
Poo balls.
Poo balls, right? I'd sit her on the pool table and roll the balls at her. And of course, because it's Amy, I was challenging her to name all the colors and the numbers, and even doing like little math with her. Of course, she's a little whiz. She says, boom, 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 and nailing them all. She was like,
do you want the square root of the green ball and the red ball and the black ball?
Yeah. Uncle Elliott, do you know if you put those two colors together, it equals? She was just teaching me already. Yeah, she's quite bright. So it was fun. But I remember that piece of engagement. And I remember Leah, who's so sweet and naturally kind and giving, would tell me many times, gosh, thanks so much for taking them for an hour. So I really got to breathe and got to, hang out. And I'd walk Austin down to games and stuff, and, just take them with me. And for me, it was parent practicing, also feeling a part of my desire to parent when I was waiting and it wasn't there. So just those opportunities again, that sometimes Leah didn't reach out to me and ask, I would reach out, say, hey, can I grab Amy for a little bit? Can I grab Austin for a little bit? Can I grab both? And of course, Leah would likely ask, is Angie going to be there? Just to make sure. What are you going to do, Elliott? Where are you going?
I'm sure she didn't.
No, she trusted me. But if I was going to take him somewhere, more elaborate, she's going to probably want to know if Angie is around.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember that. She seemed always very willing. So
absolutely.
But the point I am taking from this is a reframe for the mom again, that if you do feel the need to ask for help, remember that the person you're asking to help may be super excited. It won't be a burden at all. They want a blessing,
not a burden.
And well, especially as a nephew. Like, so when I got to hang out with Amy and Austin and have that time and babysit or whatever I was doing, that was my opportunity to bond with these new family members who I wanted to be an important part of their life. And if I hadn't been given the opportunity, which Leah may have felt, oh, does Karin want to help out? Yeah, I do want to help out. So I guess the reframe is, remember, you're giving a gift to someone who has the opportunity to help you to bond with your child. And We want to not have the parents feel that they're the only ones that can have an impact and support and love these children. It's the entire family. It's the entire, whatever your community
Takes a
is, and that's
village.
your
The old
choice.
phrase, it takes a village. I don't know where
That
that
is a
came out of or
phrase.
how long, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's true. So I love that this is a beautiful memory of you going, I wanted to do that. It wasn't something that was like, oh, I got to go help out Warren and Leah. No, I want to connect with my niece and my nephew.
Yeah. Other times, obviously, there was need on both sides. I would call Warren and say, hey, I got to do this with the girls. Can you take the boys today quick? Can I drop them off? Right. So yeah, you do some of that too, where you like really need it and you call on your siblings, call on your family, with mom, of course, many, many times as well. And what I see happen a lot, especially if you're away from your family, again, there were some advantages that our family was pretty close. But if you're away from your family and they're nowhere near you and you don't have any cousins, aunts, anybody near you, often we kind of have a natural reaction to say no to someone offering help, almost like we feel like we're imposing on them or they're taking pity on us. Right. And so they come, hey, we saw you guys sleeping through the entire church service when we were at Calvary. We would literally be falling asleep every single Sunday because the kids were in, the children's church and stuff. And we actually had a breather and I could not keep my eyes awake. It was funny. And Pastor Wills was great about it, just teasing me about it. But right. And then some of those folks see that and gosh, holy cow, Elliott and Angie must be exhausted. And they'd come over and offer something. Hey, can we bring a meal by? Can we take the kids and do stuff? And sometimes even from me, Mr. Social, extrovert, giver and taker, at times your natural resistance comes up like, oh gosh, they're taking pity on us. We must be pathetic. No, we're good. When really I should just be receiving that blessing. Oh, I've been praying about, Lord, we need help. And all of a sudden the help's offered. And if it catches you off guard or you didn't feel like you set it up, sometimes you can accidentally have what I would call stupid resistance to a blessing, right? A blessing for you and a blessing for them. And so I love the way you frame that, the perspective that if you have a inkling or a nudging or a spirit prompting to reach out and ask for help, it might be the Lord setting that up to bless the person every bit as much as it's going to bless you, even if you have the need.
And then for anyone who's listening, who is the family member or the community member, the friendship group of someone who's about to have a baby, maybe the word for us is, even if we get told, no, like we got this 10 times, just keep asking. Because one of those times, maybe it will be the time that they'll feel comfortable. And because I mean, from the outside, you might be like, well, I don't want to ask again because it seems like they got this. And maybe they're borderline, like you said, maybe feeling a little almost offended. Like, what are you trying to say? We can't handle this.
Yeah.
But that's not what anyone's trying to say when they're offering help, of course. But just a reminder that maybe just go ahead and gently keep asking, because you never know when they'll finally be like, oh, wait, no, I really do want a little breather here. So, but that's tough because, you don't want to ask and then feel like, okay, they got it, I'll back off. I mean, for me, maybe that's just my personal, just if I offer to help time and time again, and then I'm not taken up on it, then I might be like, okay, then maybe I'm butting into something that's not my business. So there's a little bit of a tension there for the person who's offering.
Besides the 4 ladies coming over every single day for 2 years, we still needed more. It was just so much. And so as you remember, Karin, it was Rick Eddy, one of my buddies at Judson, who came up with the idea. Doesn't have any children. He was just using his great brain of his and say, Elliott, why don't you have some of these Judson students, these female RA level kind of students, high quality, high character, live with you, help with the kids, and they get free room and board. And I'm like, genius move. And so then we had 4 years of help that way as well. And it was a blessing to the ladies too.
And Julie I just saw, summer.
And I was going to say, and then even friends that you would recommend, or I think Julie probably talked to you, and then she called me, I think, and got a hold of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that'd be awesome. So again, we didn't know Julie super well. We knew her a little bit, but then we had a great summer with Julie doing that. And her and Angie have very similar personalities. Maybe you knew that. They're teachers. And so that was a huge blessing for all us, other than the fact, as Julie will often say, Elliott, I've never struggled to not gain weight more than when I'm hanging out with you because you eat all the time. Yes, you're right, Julie. Sorry about that. If you're going to hang out, if you start eating like I eat, you're going to be in trouble. So that's always a fun joke between Julie and I. But those blessings, I'm such a high extrovert. I was the Wilson Hall RD for 6 years, living with 145 men. We've had over 43 people live with us now. But back then in the early stages, we hadn't done a ton of that in the context of family and kids. And I just saw a tremendous growth in Angie, intercommunication interpersonally, with this relational connection and willingly mentoring these other young ladies that lived with us, 2 of which went on to be teachers. So, of course, there was a lot of direct mentoring of the teacher mentality and teacher spirit, and allowing it to be comprehensively even greater than the need. Right? So the need is taking care of the kids and helping and being a part of that process. The benefit for the children to get other people loving on them, caring for them, other perspectives, other opinions. And yes, you need to make sure it's quality people in and out of your home, of course. But I just think that was the first thing that came to Angie's mind when I talked to her about it at dinner last night, and to flesh that piece out, to recognize that. And again, it doesn't have to be an extreme case. One child is still a lot. And so,
yeah. So if I'm kind of reflecting on what you just said, there were elements of this, which was beautiful chaos, as you coined it in last week's episode, which I loved. And so I used that in the description, beautiful chaos. And Angie's personality, because new identity, new role, new challenges that she had to dig into parts of herself that she really hadn't had to dig into before. And then you as a husband witnessing that and trying to support that and honor that and be as helpful as possible. Also knowing that initially saying, maybe we need some more full-time help, that was going to probably go against her her former identity anyway, former identity's way of being and doing life. And then, but then her being able to eventually see this beautiful chaos in which she did need help. There's just no way getting around it. Opened up another layer. So not only was she able to get support for 4 babies and 4 toddlers and then 4 elementary age kids, but then when the Judson girls are living there, getting a full-time nanny, so to speak, she's able to then mentor these young women. So I guess the takeaway from this portion is the idea that try to be, and the Bible tells us to give thanks in all circumstances. And I'm sure when you're like, this beautiful chaos is a gift from God, but it's also nuts. And so it's hard to give thanks for having to be like, now I got to have someone live in my house. And that's just kind of, it feels intrusive. And now I got to be on my best behavior. Trying to find that silver lining, so to speak, or something to give thanks to and thanks for, even in the midst of something that feels overwhelming and perhaps undesirable on the surface, but that she was able to then not only have support with her babies and her kids, but also have the opportunity to mentor a young person in a way that she wouldn't have been if the woman weren't actually living in the house.
Yeah, she got the maternal mentoring from women like Peggy Mashing and others who really godly women for many, many, many years, and Angie already respected and appreciated, and the church ladies. So she got that piece, and then she passed it down. It's what I call in my teaching the Paul, Timothy, Titus equation, that we should all have a mentor above us and peer that is sharpening iron at all times, and then we're mentoring down. That came organically through these processes of her acknowledging and being vulnerable enough to say, Elliott, we got to do something. I know you can't take a bunch of days off all the time, so we got to do something. And I was all in. When I was home, I quit coaching. I sacrificed a lot of dreams and things I had as well immediately, and say, okay, God brought the kids. Coaching, a greater love was needed than my love of coaching. And so I just willingly walked away and was all in and helping every way I possibly could. I like to clean and organize. So I was always, sometimes to Angie's frustration, cleaning stuff up before I checked with her to make sure the kids weren't going back to it. So I'd often, Olivia was an elaborate role play creator of organic systems with 400 Barbies and things all over the place. And sometimes I would come in if they were taking a walk and I come home from work or something, or they were at the playground, I instinctively just start cleaning everything, and then come home and the girls are crying because dad put away their whole story creation. So I had to learn again to not just say, oh, things look cluttery, clean it, but rather check with Angie, check with the girls, check with the boys, and just learn those kind of systemics as well. So I think the environmental piece there is hugely important. Support. And then Karin, something I just talked with a client about 2 days ago as well, not about babies, but just about when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're in a season of kind of growth, but it's painful. And maybe we're not feeling quite ourselves in some regard. And in this particular woman's case, she's thinking about a job change and some other things going on. And I reminded her, as I reminded myself, when we overwhelm like that, structuring the primary groundings and primary identity of who we are kind of reestablishes a baseline when everything else around us externally seems crazy. So in this case, on this call the other day, it was, she normally exercised all the time, and now she hadn't for a while just because she's feeling out of sorts and got to get right back on it. Right. Had normally eating quite healthy and quite nutritionally, and kind of got off on, when you're not feeling yourself, you're not feeling good, the Doritos look better than the carrot and the cucumbers.
I mean, but they always look better, let's be honest.
Yeah. Just those things. It's just, so in the case of you're having this overwhelming feeling of your first baby coming, or first baby came and maybe they're colicky and maybe they're getting rashes all the time, you can't figure it out yet. All those things that happen. It's
probably a vaccine injury. I'm sorry.
That could be it as well. But whatever the case
probably
is, it's going
from the CDC schedule, but that's another topic.
It's another episode. But whatever it is causing us to be overwhelmed, we often cash in the very things that we need to stabilize.
Right. And so you're talking about disruption of identity, of core self, of knowledge of self. Yes. And yet in this episode, we're basically saying, mothers, be ready for that. It's going to happen. So
in some capacity, it's going to happen. Yep.
You're recommending to try to get back to those core elements of self, but that is going to be more difficult in this season of life because a mom maybe have been up all night with a baby, so she's not going to go make that healthy meal that she normally would for breakfast. She's going to grab whatever Lego My Egos or something like that. So I guess
for husbands, let me throw this in. So for husbands,
go ahead.
For husbands, your wife has been a faithful, we'll just use the working out one, a faithful gym goer for 7 years prior to the baby. And the baby comes, and once her body's recovered enough that she's given the green light by the doctor to do some stuff again, but the sleep schedule is difficult. The rhythm of morning workouts doesn't look like it's going to work based on the baby's feeding timings, everything like that. But as you talk to your wife and discover she's frustrated, she can't get any kind of rhythm of her own workout, that's when a husband's got to jump in and go, okay, let's figure it out. Let's find a rhythm. What would be the best rhythm where you can get at least a half-hour workout in or a 45-minute workout in, even if it's just walking around the neighborhood, even if you don't go to LA Fitness or wherever else, and kind of help make those things happen. Do it together. That's what we talked about last episode as well. Making sure you're doing the best you can to make these decisions together as much as possible, but being honest and open about what is the real need. Maybe she says, you know what? The need really isn't to work out. The need's, I haven't seen my best friends. I haven't seen my ladies in, 6 months. So I appreciate, husband, you're trying to help me work out. I think I need every other Friday to go out with the ladies. And Karin, these things, if we don't structure them in the midst of overwhelming periods of life, whether it's babies or something else, they won't happen. So it's literally structuring up when systemics feel out of control and overwhelmed, and put them on the calendar. And of course, there'll be adjustments. Put them in there and move on.
And so getting back to the communication that you talked about last episode, the pre-communication. So for those who have a baby coming soon, what sorts of, can we even try to anticipate here, knowing me and my personality? And I'm thinking of the young women who are pregnant in our lives, who are very high functioning, very, very bright, very, I got this, capable, independent, used to doing all the things and doing them all well. This might be a time to start pre-communicating, like you said, about, okay, there's probably a chance that this ball's going to drop. And how can my husband help me with that? Is that what you're getting at?
Absolutely. Join together. And just like I do with clients, Karin, that are overwhelmed about anything in life, let alone clients who would be about the baby issue, our baby's there, is to look at like your primary wellness factors and build a plan for all of them to be stable, strong, and grounded. What's my social piece? What's my emotional? What's my mental? What's my physical? What's my spiritual? And what's my sexual? And talking through those. And again, doesn't mean we're going to agree on them automatically. And right, for some mothers, and this is true for Angie as well, because of my personality and temperament and being really well known at Judson and well known at my church and well known in the Elgin community, everyone celebrated the boys coming. Right? You remember like the shower at Judson was huge. Right? And so we have pictures of like, there was like over 50 people who visited the boys at our house, like within the first week. And then I remember Angie saying to me, that's it, hon. I can't, I'm so glad we're celebrating every single, there's tears and joys and prayers. It was all wonderful. But she let me know, you got to slow it down. And it wasn't me orchestrating them. No. It was just people celebrating with us.
Right.
But again, to be honest and open enough, Angie's very direct with her feelings. So that makes that easier most of the time. She's like, you gotta help slow it down. And so then we, moved it to more like weekends. And so there's the opposite side. We had so much support, so much encouragement. I actually had to tell folks, hey, can I come over and see the babies and talk to Ange right now? I'm like, you know what? We're going to need to wait till the weekend. It's been a little overwhelming, just be honest. So there's another flip to talking together, perspective, emotion. And normally Angie would have no problem telling someone no. She's got great boundaries. But in that scenario, overwhelmed, in a new joy zone after waiting all those years to have babies, she was not as good as she normally is about telling people no and needing my help. Normally, I need her help on boundaries because my boundaries are all over the place. But in this case, it was reversed a little bit. And again, that scenario to do it together.
All right. So I'm hearing a lot, continued communication, continued trying to anticipate. Yeah, the structure. We talked about the hierarchy of
Put
the
stuff
marriage.
on the calendar, in your app or whatever just modern generation does. They don't do calendars, but whatever you do, put it in there.
Yeah. And so just as we wrap up, Elliott, any other words for husbands as yes, their identity will also shuffle up a bit, but probably it'll still be more of a potential kind of dust up with the intrapersonal identity of the mother/wife. What final kind of tips for husbands as they witness this?
I think I go back to sorry, Karin, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, sorry.
I think you go back to the 3 A's of building intimacy and the 3 A's of tearing down intimacy.
Okay.
And so in this case, the 3 A's of tearing down intimacy is assume, attack, and accuse. And so we don't want to assume as husbands that we know what our wife's going through as she becomes a mother. And even if things look great, don't always assume she's got it. I'm actually going to take my only free Saturday of the month and go golfing, which might be a really good need and a really good thing he needs to do, but make sure you talk through that first. So your wife doesn't think, oh, here's the Saturday, finally, I'm going to get a break because he doesn't have anything open. And now he's scheduled something without talking, right? Again, hanging out and play golf with the boys is very important. So I don't want men to feel like that's wrong, but the context matters. And so we don't want to assume things. We don't certainly want to attack when either of us as a spouse is vulnerable. We don't want to start accusing them of something like, you don't care about anymore. You don't care about me. All you care about is the baby. That's very terrible things to say to a young mother. Even if you feel there's some truth in that perception, we can say it a lot differently and talk about ourselves rather than the other person. Right, hon, I miss you. I miss our time together. That's way better than saying you don't care about me, right? So watch those accusations and attacks. And then the building the intimacy is, right, the affirmations, right, to affirm one another. Even when you see your wife there and she looks haggard and torn and weary and you say, hon, you've never looked more beautiful to me, right? And if a man says something like that, wives, he almost assuredly means it. And so please don't say no, block it. Don't block his affirmations and his affection there and to say, no, I'm a mess. I look gross. I look hideous. You're just trying to say that. Say thank you. Just receive it so a man can still be honoring and cherishing his wife, even in the midst of those difficult seasons and times and challenges where she doesn't feel maybe as naturally beautiful as she has before. So thinking to yourself as husbands and wives, of course, but husbands in this scenario when the dependency on the early mothering or on the early baby stages, so primarily on a woman, how can I keep affirming? How can I keep appreciating? How can I keep building up our relationship so we actually come through this challenge season even better? And then, like I said, one of the next episodes, we'll talk about the massive changes I see once there's a second or a third child. And as we like to say in basketball terms, you once you have to go to a zone defense over man to man, third baby, fourth baby, fifth baby, it gets a lot more complicated. And again, in that realm, I'll talk a little bit about one of our future episodes about why did we move into foster care when we already had such a difficult scenario with our 4 children so close together? And what did that bring into the equation of needs and vulnerabilities and support and community?
All right.
All right, your turn to bless us out today as a female representation.
God, thank you for this time to share the wisdom that you've given Elliott from having had those answers in abundance and that beautiful chaos. And we just are so thankful for the new babies coming, the ones in our family in particular, of course, and then the other couples around the world who are in this season of excitement, enthusiasm, and ready to receive the beautiful gift of a new life that they created together. And just pray for wisdom, pray for patience, pray for abundance of love and supernatural ability to love their gifts from you in the way that you would have them love these children. Thank you for this time and for the chance to come to you before your throne as your children anytime. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Love and Life with Dr. Karin and Pastor Elliott is produced by Tim May and executive producer Dr. Karin Anders-Nabel. For more information about Love and Life, please go to loveandlifemedia.com.